Things have been looking up for CLIFFJUMPER fans lately. Normally we'd be stuck getting red repaint after red repaint of whatever Bumblebee mold Hasbro throws at us, but that's been changing slowly over the past decade. Transformers Prime introduced a new version of CLIFFJUMPER that in no way, shape, or form could be made from that same line's Bumblebee, and it was novel for the time. While the character hasn't really shown up in anything since then, CLIFFJUMPER's been leading the charge with a new Studio Series figure that, ironically, will end up being repainted into Bumblebee, mark my words, and the subject of today's review. Welcome to Kit Katastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers Earthrise Deluxe Class CLIFFJUMPER. This figure came out in 2020 as part of Wave 1 of the Deluxe assortment. As opposed to his usual portrayal as a squishy, cute little car, as is the case when he's pretty much always some modified Bumblebee, Earthrise CLIFFJUMPER's alternate mode is more tuned towards power and performance. I know he's meant to be an amalgamation of multiple different imported sports cars, but from some angles I can't help but see a little bit of a resemblance to Prime CLIFFJUMPER's fuck-off energy. He actually doesn't look half bad next to Prime CLIFFJUMPER either, considering that Earthrise CLIFFJUMPER is the single smallest deluxe class figure I've ever seen. He looks far more at home with the likes of Power the Prime's Tailgate and Generation's Dead End, which is a damn shame considering both of these figures were sold at only a fraction of what CLIFFJUMPER goes for. It's no secret that Transformers figures have been simultaneously getting smaller and more expensive each year, but Earthrise CLIFFJUMPER might be one of the most insulting products of this phenomenon in years. Sure, the vehicle mode is far more detailed and polished than a typical Legends class figure. The sculpted detail picks out far more than on, say, Tailgate, though the paintwork is minimal at a glance. Turns out, nearly every single surface of this vehicle mode is coated in a matte red paint, much like on Siege Sideswipe, which I feel comes across really well in person. CLIFFJUMPER's exorbitant price tag is supposed to be made up for with his accessories. In this mode, they are some skis and a pair of booster rockets to mimic the iconic scene from the episode Dinobot Island Part 2, where the Autobots surf across some water for some reason. It's been a while since I've seen it. I normally can't sit through G1 episodes. In robot mode, these parts become a weapon, so I'm appreciative of this really clever use of weapon storage. CLIFFJUMPER's transformation is really easy, though beginning the process can be a little frustrating. The vehicle mode is held together pretty tightly by a bunch of tabs and slots that at times can be a little difficult to unlatch. It also helps that this scheme resorts to one of the most egregious cardinal sins, parts forming. The entire rear window and the taillights come off and are just kept to the side, meant to be reattached later if you so choose. Apparently this was done because there was just no other way to get that part where the designers wanted it to go, but at that point, I'd have just scrapped the design entirely and tried again. Generation 1 CLIFFJUMPER's robot mode never really left an impression on me, and neither does that of this figure. This is mostly a problem with the source material than anything else, but I find this design really lackluster and uninspired. Sure, it might have some charm as a basic little robot man, but it's boring. CLIFFJUMPER has always bored me, and this is no exception. Now, it definitely looks good as a CLIFFJUMPER from pretty much every angle, though he's looking quite sparse from the back. The arms look too lean in comparison to the rest of him, though that might just be his massive clogs throwing the proportions off. He's still extremely small in this mode, barely standing above Legends class figures from just a few years ago, and even standing shorter than a Scout from over a decade ago. The head sculpt, as always, is very nice, and is my favorite thing about this robot mode. If you notice, however, his head and his biceps are both cast in red plastic. In that case, why is every other part just painted red? It feels like this figure got the short end of the stick in all manners, from his diminutive size and what feels like a completely wasted paint budget. I'm honestly just dumbfounded. The rear window, which we pulled off during transformation, has a black peg on the inside, which people without long nails, such as myself, will most likely require something to pry it out with. This can be placed onto CLIFFJUMPER's arm as a rather weak shield, or on his back to give him some actual mass. I prefer this look. Those two boosters can be held as rather large pistols, or they can combine with the skis to become the rather large cannon which CLIFFJUMPER materialized out of thin air in the Generation 1 episode More Than Meets the Eye Part 1. I applaud the effort taken to make the accessories form two very distinct references to the original cartoon. I just wish that effort went into the figure instead. Now, CLIFFJUMPER is very posable for his size, and this is one of the reasons why people are able to justify the insane price for his aforementioned small stature. Starting at the head, he has a ball joint that allows him to look 360 degrees, but it is very tight, and it can look up a little bit, and he can look down a little bit, but not much. He can't really tilt his head because of just the shape of his helmet. It's too wide for that sort of thing. So it's mainly just used for looking up slightly and looking left and right. The shoulders rotate 360 degrees all the way around, and they go more than 90 degrees outwards each, which is pretty good. They have a bicep swivel and an elbow joint that bends 90 degrees, which is adequate, but it can also bend 90 degrees reverse, so if you want to break his arm, you can do that. It's just for transformation, though. The wrists have a swivel that go all the way around, and that is something you don't see on many figures of this size. Same for a waist swivel, unless it's necessary for transformation, and on CLIFFJUMPER it is, so I'm not going to give him too much credit for that sort of thing. He also has an arcing back, but this is also due to transformation, so it's not that groundbreaking, but it is nice. The hips move forward and backwards about 90 degrees each direction, and they can go outwards 90 degrees for a full split. The thighs rotate about 90 degrees-ish outwards and a little bit inwards, and they have a 90-degree knee bend, which is adequate as well. And finally, at the feet, they have the War for Cybertron ankle tilt that can go all the way out, which is also something you don't normally see on figures of this size. Now, there's actually not a whole lot that's really unique to CLIFFJUMPER besides maybe these wrist swivels. So I don't really think that just having a few extra joints that are present on some other figures, I don't think it really justifies the price hike for a figure of this size. Earthrise CLIFFJUMPER was one of the most controversial entries in the line when it was first revealed, and for good reason. This figure just isn't worth $20, no matter which way you cut it. He's too small, his engineering isn't up to snuff, and for some reason this figure just seems to want to waste its budget on paint for no good reason. Anyone who honestly thinks that his accessories makes up for the small size is fooling themselves big time. I don't hate this figure by any means, I'm just disappointed. I still sort of like it, but not enough to keep me from rating this figure tragic. If you liked this video or otherwise found it helpful or informative, then please subscribe for more reviews like this in the future. I'm looking forward to 300 subscribers soon, and feel free to suggest topics for future reviews in the comments. When we return, we'll be taking a look at a far more substantial Earthrise figure. This has been Katastrophe. Transform and roll out.